So when you feel like you don't really have the resilience to get through something difficult, ask yourself, is it really the fact that you don't have much resilience, or is it the fact that you're low on energy? Because our energy availability and our efficiency of using energy has a really strong relationship with our level of resilience and our mental strength. So a number of people, or some of you may have heard me talk about my extreme adventure racing into areas like the subarctic in Alaska, these sort of things. So on one of these particular races, I was crossing the Alaskan range. So I got out of bed at around 4 o'clock in the morning. I travelled up the mountain to the next checkpoint, arrived there around about lunchtime, rested for a couple of hours or just after lunch, had a really big feed, and decided to make sure that I was in a really good condition to continue up the mountain and go over the range because it was quite exposed. I was going to be passing it at night time, and I just wanted to make sure that I didn't compromise my ability to get over the top. And I'd sort of estimated, based on the distance, that I'd be sort of able to summit the peak or summit through the pass at around about midnight, go down the other side a little bit, catch a little bit of sleep in a sort of sheltered area or somewhere out of the wind, and then continue on to the checkpoint below, which from memory was around about sort of 35 miles or 50 kilometres. So after having a decent rest, I sort of set out at around about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I was making really good going. It was a nice afternoon. There was a fair bit of wind, and it was starting to pick up as the sun was starting to drop. So it was starting to get quite cold, a little bit of sort of blizzard conditions, but there was a lot of snow drift from the wind pushing snow across the trail. So it made it a little bit difficult to see where I was going. And I was sort of walking along the trail. If I went off the trail, my foot would sort of sink into some of the ice or snow, and that was kind of keeping me on the trail because visibility was a little bit difficult. At around about 8:30, I didn't realise, but I came to a fork in the trail, and because of the snowdrift, I hadn't seen the fork going off to the right, which was the direction I was supposed to take, and I continued going straight ahead or off to the left. So after a while, I'd kind of noticed that I probably wasn't on track and moving towards the pass that I was supposed to be moving towards, and I was kind of keeping an eye on it, hoping that the trail would sort of bend around to the right at some point and I'd be back on track. So around about 10:30, 11 o'clock, I'd worked out that this wasn't going where it was supposed to go, and I'd sort of covered around about 8 kilometres by this stage in the wrong direction or up the wrong path, or up the wrong trail. So I tried to cross country a little bit because I thought I might be able to meet up with the trail I was on, but there was a little bit of overflow and a creek and this sort of thing, and it was just too risky to go on. So I sort of had to fight through a little bit of snow, got a little bit deeper in it than what I thought, but I finally got back onto the trail and started returning back. So I had to go back the 8 kilometres that I'd gone already. And at around about 2 in the morning, I arrived back at the point where the fork was in the trail, and I found the right trail and then continued back on my path. But this was after the point that I'd sort of planned on working till, where I was going to sleep. So from there, then I realigned and got back on my path. So at around about sort of 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, I was heavily fatigued. So I was in this really deep fatigue state. All I wanted to do was sleep. My mind was screaming at me to stop and lay down and get in a couple of hours of rest because I didn't think I had any energy. I was sort of looking at the next bend in the trail or looking at the next clump of trees ahead or just looking for something 100 or 200 meters in the distance and walking to that. And when I got there, I'd find something new to sort of focus on. But every time I got there, I'd stop for a short rest because I just thought I was so fatigued I was really going to struggle to make the pass. And I was kind of fighting sleep as well, so I was sort of micro-napping here and there. But the wind was too heavy or too strong that I knew if I stopped on the side of the trail and slept in the exposed conditions, it could turn into a survival situation. So I kept on going, and I figured if I could find somewhere with enough shelter, then I would go to sleep. But as I got further and further up, there was no shelter, and I got closer and closer to the pass, and I kept fighting this fatigue. And every time there was a steep ascent, I really had to work hard or work really hard, draw upon my mental strength to get up it. But I felt to the point where I was just physically drained. I was mentally drained, and I wasn't too sure that I'd be able to get there without sort of stopping to rest properly or having something to eat. But I persisted on, and then about 8 o'clock in the morning, I finally reached the summit. But by this stage, I'd already gone around about 50 kilometres, which was much further than I'd anticipated I'd actually have to go. But I decided to continue persisting on because I thought if I got over the other side, then I could rest there. So I eventually summited or got over the pass at about 8 o'clock in the morning. And it was the same time, or around about the same time, that the sun started to come through and it started to get a little bit light, or the first sort of parts of daylight started to break through. It was a little bit overcast, but there was enough light to come through to actually start to engage the signalling process that kind of wakes you up and gets you remotivated. So by this time, I'd probably covered around about 50 kilometres, which was a lot further than I'd intended to go because I'd spent so much time off track. And I had around about 25 kilometres to go from what I could estimate from where I was. And it was all downhill. And I sort of thought about it. And with the daylight, I sort of had renewed energy. And I thought, well, I'm just going to push on. I'm just going to go down to get to the next checkpoint. And then when I'm down there, I'll rest and recover. And I'll sort of realign and do what I need to do so I can get back into the race, or get back into how I want to race the race. So I persisted. I went down. As the sort of cloud broke and the sun came through, I actually felt okay. I had a little bit of food. I maintained a half reasonable pace. I sort of went down the other side of the mountain, got down to the next checkpoint, and I arrived there at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And this is after sort of some 70 kilometres that I'd covered in almost or just under a 24-hour period, or in 23 hours. And this was going through a period where I thought I was physically drained. I was mentally drained. I just didn't think I had it in me to continue on. So when I got there, I decided to have a bit of food, have a little bit of sleep, and sort of recharge before I started to continue on, knowing that I had another 140, 130 kilometres to go until the next checkpoint, quite a long distance for the next checkpoint. So this was a really good chance to recover, considering that my previous sleep was some 34 hours and somewhere over 80 kilometres prior from when I'd actually got out of bed before I went to that last checkpoint. So my ability to overcome in this situation really didn't have a lot to do with my resilience or my mental strength. It was more around how much energy I perceived I had. And as it got darker, or as the morning, or we got deeper into the morning and things got really difficult, it wasn't resilience, it was energy and the perception of energy I had, because there was so many cognitive factors going on around neurotransmitters, around hormones, around a number of different functions where my body was trying to engage the sleep mechanism. It reduced my resilience, it reduced my mental strength to try and get me to go to sleep. And because I was able to sort of work through that, as soon as I got over the rise, I got renewed with energy, and I was able to continue on for another 24, 25 kilometres or whatever it was. And this is after a point where I'd been sort of in such a deep fatigue state for several hours that if it really was fatigue or resilience, I wouldn't have been able to go on. But it was more around just the signalling around perceptions of how much energy I had available to me. And this goes back to sort of more of our survival, or the way we adapted within our environment when we were very primitive. So if we think back to primitive terms, so we wanted to make sure that we had enough energy available to us just in case we had to run from the sort of metaphorical lion. And although the line doesn't really exist anymore, we still have all those primitive mechanisms around our energy availability, our perceptions of how much we used, how much energy we have left, and what we need to confront. And that kind of influences what we're willing to take on and what we perceive we're able to do. So when we think back to the previous presentations on hope and hopelessness, when we are completely out of energy, or we don't think we have enough energy to take on a really difficult task or sort of get out of the situation we're in, then that can lead to hopelessness. So a lot of it is around how much energy we think we have, because if we don't see a way out and we don't think we've got enough energy to find a way out, then at some point we have to wonder whether it's worth the effort or whether we just quit, and whether we fall into these feelings of hopelessness. So when you do find that you are low on resilience or mental strength, just have a bit of a think about whether that is the case, whether it's perception or whether it's just some factors going on within your life that have put you in a position where you don't think you have high energy availability, or you don't feel you've got enough energy to get through the task. So even a number of our lifestyle factors can contribute to how much energy we feel we have available, or our perception. And this is where good sleep, good nutrition and good exercise comes in, because sleep allows us to recover, it rejuvenates our energy. Nutrition gives us energy. And if we're eating the right foods and we have really good energy availability, if we're eating the wrong foods, then that can lead to inflammation as well. And that can create its own problems. And if we exercise, then it just increases our capacity to store energy. So, and not only that, it increases our efficiency to use energy. So when we are going through difficult tasks, we have more energy available to us. And our levels of physical energy availability and our mental energy availability are heavily aligned. So when we're physically fatigued, mentally we don't feel like we're able to do much. When we're mentally fatigued, physically we don't think we're going to be able to do much. So our physical and mental fatigue and energy availability go hand in hand. So when we think about our day-to-day lives now, we're always working. We're never recovering, or we're working more than we ever used to, and we're recovering even less. So we get up in the morning, people feel like they need to be doing things. They feel like they need to be productive. So we get up, we look at social media, we look at all these things. We're always analysing whether it's threat, whether it's opportunity, and that's using energy. So we're burning energy early, and then we go to work. We're constantly interacting with work. We're trying to solve problems there, so we're using more energy. We come home, we answer emails, we're trying to be more productive. We're constantly using energy. So if we're burning more energy than we ever have, and we're more sedentary than we've ever been, so we have less energy available, we're less efficient, then we're going to find that we're going to run into problems when it comes to our energy availability, our energy balance, and our ability to recover that energy. So when we think about this in terms of lifestyle factors, if we're not sleeping well, then we're not recovering our energy. If we're not eating well, then we're not able to get more energy from our diet. And if we've got a really poor diet, we're actually going to get inflammation, which is going to increase our energy burn. And if we're not exercising, then we're not increasing our capacity for energy, and we're not increasing our efficiency to use it. So a lot of what our resilience is, or what we think resilience is, can come down, or is a factor of our lifestyle around our daily routine, how much energy we're burning on things we don't need to be burning, how much energy we have available, the lifestyle behaviors that we have that are allowing us to maximize our energy capacity and efficiency of use, and how much rest we're actually getting to replenish our energy stores. So if you're in periods where you don't think you have much resilience, or you're having sort of negative mental, or you're under a lot of stress, which is having a negative mental impact on you, make sure that you are putting the factors in that allow you to replenish your energy stores, and that you're using energy only on things that you need to use energy on. So you don't want to waste it, so you don't want to become inefficient with your energy use. So when you are under pressure, think about, is it a resilience problem, or is it an energy availability and usage problem? So I hope that kind of helps you understand a little bit how energy impacts our resilience, and how by improving our lifestyle factors and our deliberate behaviors and some of our habits, we can improve our energy availability and its efficiency of use. So I hope that kind of helps. And from there, you can start looking at some of your lifestyle behaviors, routines, and habits that you can improve a little bit to make big improvements on your life.